On this edition of Native Report, we meet artist Chris Pappan and view what he calls Native American lowbrow art.
We visit the Indian Community School of Milwaukee during an evening open house.
And we learn about the Indian Women's Pocahontas Club of Claremore, Oklahoma, the state's oldest chartered club.
We also learn what we can do to lead healthier lives and hear from our elders on this edition of Native Report.
Production of Native Report is made possible by grants from the Shakopee-Mdewakanton Sioux community, the Blandin Foundation, and the Duluth Superior Area Community Foundation.
Welcome to Native Report. I'm Rita Aspinwall.
And I'm Ernie Stevens. The Art of Crispa Pan reflects the dominant culture's distorted perceptions of Native people while loudly proclaiming we are still here, and has showcased his art nationally and internationally. We caught up with Chris at the Field Museum of Chicago to learn more about his influences, his technique, and his exhibit.
Chicago's Field Museum is one of the world's largest natural history museums and is not known as one to exhibit modern art and artists, which makes Chris Pappan's exhibit, Drawing on Tradition, all that much more remarkable. It combines the traditional with the contemporary.
The Field Museum, it's a natural history museum, and they're not really known for showing contemporary art. So there's kind of being in the right place at the right time is how I look at it more. The Field Museum has a reputation with this exhibit hall in particular. It hasn't changed since 1950 when it opened. So my work here being an intervention of contemporary art over this dated exhibit, presenting a new, fresh perspective is something that is very new for the museum.
What makes Chris's exhibit unique is the subject matter and the preferred medium for his art, ledger paper. He calls his art lowbrow Native American.
I went to the Institute of American Indian Arts in Santa Fe, so what was interesting about that, growing up in the Southwest and then going to art school there in Santa Fe, in the mid to late 80s, that was very, pink adobe type imagery stuff. Howling coyotes were quite the rage. So I was very, conscious about trying to stay away from that type of imagery. So I was really more trying to focus on what my influences were, which was, sci-fi movies, punk rock, skateboarding. So, I was more into, that side of things more than my native heritage. It wasn't until a number of years later where I decided to marry the two, and it kind of turns out to be like a Native American lowbrow type work. Lowbrow being lurid type imagery, monsters and naked women and that sort of thing. Combining that type of imagery with my native heritage, I thought would be really interesting in the native art context. One day, at my day job, I came across an unused ledger book. And then knowing the history and the tradition of ledger art, I thought, wow, it'd be really great, to combine this lowbrow idea with the ledger art and call them 21st century ledger drawings.
All of Chris's ledger pieces are hand-drawn in graphite, but he incorporates other materials as well. And when he paints, he usually uses acrylics. Much of his work borders on the surrealistic. He incorporates double imagery and some pieces feature distortions that serve a purpose.
In terms of the imagery, I work from old photographs, historical photographs. I look at what they're wearing, sort of the context that they're in the photograph. Are they static, portrait, like a lot of them are. The double imagery, that kind of started as a happy accident. I was, just kind of playing around with transferring an image, and when I did it this first time, I thought I had messed up. I did it the reverse from the way I wanted to, and then I was like, oh, I messed that up. And I was like, wait a minute, what if I just take this and, flip it over and maybe combine the two and, just see what happens. And then it just grew into this huge metaphor of, the duality of Native American experience, or, the good and the bad, the two sides of the story. And, it's just, full of meaning, which is really interesting too, because the viewer will bring something to it as well. So when I take an image and, combine it, there's this new thing that kind of happens in the middle, and, the viewer will see something there in the middle that I never intended. It becomes more of an interactive experience for both them and me as the artist. I experiment with different types of distortions or morphing of the figure. And that stemmed from the lowbrow art idea at first. But again, with this experimentation and playing around, I attribute more meaning to it, and that meaning is the distorted views that people have of us. The distorted ideal of what's supposed to be native or not, that the viewer is bringing. But it's also reminiscent of the distorted view that we as Native people help perpetuate. Researching a lot of these images, I've been learning a lot about my people and where I come from. And it's been really interesting too, in that I'm educating others as to, who the Kanza people are. Because, anytime I tell people, I'm Kanza and that's where Kansas comes from, they're like, oh wow, I never knew that. So, it's been a really great learning experience for me and for people who view my work as well. In terms of Native American culture, there was no word for artwork. There was no separation of, things being painted on things. Like, that wasn't separate. It was all inclusive. In the society that we live in, there's just so many different facets to it. But if you look, you can see that there's artwork in almost everything.
Hepato means liver in Greek, and itis means inflammation, so hepatitis means inflammation of the liver. There are multiple illnesses, infections, and toxins that can cause hepatitis, and hepatitis C is one of them. This is a viral infection that often doesn't have any symptoms until it has done a lot of damage, and many with hepatitis C were actually infected years or even decades ago. Sometimes hepatitis C is found during a workup for something else, such as fatigue, jaundice, or joint aches, and sometimes it's found by screening those with increased risk of having the virus. About a third of people infected will have symptoms and the rest will be asymptomatic. Most of the time, hepatitis C is spread through blood contact. IV drug abuse is one of the most common causes of hepatitis C, and with the opiate crisis currently going on, this will likely get worse. Sharing needles is never a good idea, and hepatitis C can be spread through exposures of much less than a drop of blood. The virus can live on a surface such as a needle for up to 3 weeks. Sometimes people who have had blood transfusions before 1992 could have gotten it through blood. The virus was identified in 1989, and blood products are carefully screened since then. If you get tattoos, make sure needles are new and ink and other supplies are not reused. Sexual transmission of hepatitis C is not common, but it can happen if there is open skin or bleeding. Sometimes babies can become infected during childbirth, but this is also not common. Breastfeeding is safe unless you have cracked or bleeding nipples. Following exposure to the virus, about 55 to 85% of people will develop chronic hepatitis C. Most are unaware of the ongoing damage and inflammation, and this can lead to progressive hepatic fibrosis, or scarring of the liver. A significant number of those infected will go on to develop cirrhosis of the liver, liver failure, or liver cancer over a period of about 20 to 50 years. Alcohol use when the liver is damaged is very dangerous and harmful. Chronic hepatitis C rarely resolves spontaneously and generally needs treatment. The treatment for hepatitis C used to be very long, and the side effects made people feel like they always had the flu. Newer treatments are becoming increasingly available, and they can eradicate the virus completely in as little as 8 weeks, but they're extremely expensive, and not all insurance plans cover them. The goal of treatment is to eradicate the virus completely and stop the progression of any ongoing liver damage. The prevalence of hepatitis C is higher in certain populations, such as those in prisons or in institutions. Healthcare workers can be at a higher risk if sterile precautions with needles and sharp instruments are not followed. If someone is treated for hepatitis C and is able to eradicate the virus, they can still get a repeat infection if they re-expose themselves to the virus. Opiates, heroin, methamphetamine, and other drugs are not the path that was meant for you. You need to shed those things if you're going to fulfill the reason the Creator put you here. We are here to help you with that. Don't forget to call an elder. They've been waiting for your call. I'm Dr. Arnie Vinio, and this is Health Matters.
The Indian Community School of Milwaukee was started by a grassroots effort of 3 Oneida mothers. The school was the site of the National Congress of American Indians Cultural Night held during their annual convention and marketplace. Join us now as we visit the Indian Community School.
As the sun set behind the Indian Community School of Milwaukee, school staff and students were busy inside preparing for an evening of visitors from the National Congress of American Indians annual convention. This night is meant to showcase the school.
The event going on tonight is the National Congress of American Indian Culture Night. And what we're trying to do is highlight the tribal nations from this area, from the Woodland and Great Lakes areas. So we have a number of workshops, presentations from like the Menominee, Potawatomi, Ojibwe, and Ho-Chunk and Oneida nations. And so we'll have some dancing tonight. We also have like some displays, like we have a beautiful weaving display out here. So those are just the types of things to give everybody kind of a taste of what it is around here, the cultures around here, because, you know, historically our tribes were moved west of the Mississippi. So lots of people don't even know what tribes are east of the Mississippi, even Native people. So that's why the Culture Night is focusing on our area.
The school has its origins with members of Milwaukee's Native community who were frustrated with the city's public school system.
It was 3 mothers who had come together and said that our students just are not being treated right. They're not allowed to speak their language. Their traditions and customs are trying to be taken from them. So they pulled them out of the public school system and started teaching them in a basement in 1971. Really started around 1969, the discussions that took place kind of during the AIM movement as well. And so in 1971, they started working in basements of people's houses to educate the students, keep them in their language, keep them in their traditions and their customs, give them a strong sense of Native identity so that they'd be able to overcome the obstacles in city living for Native students.
We were motivated by the Minneapolis AIM that already started a school. The AIM office was on Valich Street at that time, and I lived above it. In a flat on top of above the AIM office. So, and it was kind of a big flat. I had a nice big living room, and we said, well, we'll start it right here. We'll start right in my living room. And they brought their kids, and then pretty soon other mothers were bringing. It was mainly mothers that were single parents, and we started teaching them about the culture. Human beings, they need to know who they are. They need identity. They need a sense of place, purpose, a sense of belonging. So that's what we started out, teaching them who they were and you know, doing the culture and the history as much as we could, as much as we knew, but we were also in the process of learning that and learning who we were.
There's been a lot of locations that we have had. One of them was actually using a treaty, the Treaty of Laramie, so that they could take over the Coast Guard station on Milwaukee's lakefront. And over the course of time, we ended up becoming connected with the Potawatomi. Forest County Potawatomi wanted to exercise treaty rights. They were able to work within land grant, trusting land through the school. And so the connection and work with Forest County Potawatomi really made this facility possible.
The school proved to be a perfect spot for NCAI's Cultural Night. Guests took in dance and drum demonstrations, toured the facility, feasted, and listened to the poetry of an invited elder.
The National Congress of American Indians is really repertorial for our nations to be here and be involved with that and being selected to come here and share my poetry. To everybody that might be listening to this, that you could go into your communities and help the people that need help, you know, love one another and be there for each other.
Native people don't need to know everything about all the tribes, but if you get a chance to learn that, that's where I think that it's important to see how you are the same and how you are different, and to start to appreciate the things that come from the different nations.
I've been in other locations at other schools, and nothing has been like this. No matter what, we have over 20 tribes that are represented at our school. We're truly intertribal. But yet we're all able to fall back on the fact that, you know, we have Native American ancestry and we're connected by that no matter where we come from. So it's very comforting, very soothing, very calming. Come on out and visit the school. We have mini powwows each month. Our students, there's 3 languages that are taught here, Menominee, Ojibwe, and Oneida. All students from 4 years old all the way to 8th grade take language class, and they're staying connected to who they are, and we continue to try to build that as best we can and give them the experiences to make sure that they're prepared for the future. So just very thankful for the opportunities and encourage people to come check us out.
State-tribal relations are extremely important because as we educate our fellow legislators, we have to remind them that states are sovereign nations, as it's brought out in the United States Constitution. Well, a lot of these folks did not get tribal governance when they went to school or college. So they have absolutely no idea. So when they pass laws, or attempt to pass laws that infringe on tribal sovereignty, we have to stop that. So, and the best way to do that is just to educate them and get them to modify their legislation so that it does no harm to tribes and moves on.
The Indian Women's Pocahontas Club is Oklahoma's oldest chartered club, established on June 29, 1899. The club and its members are dedicated to social and educational pursuits. It is an organization focused on serving the Native American community.
The National Congress of American Indians annual convention and marketplace draws hundreds of attendees from across Indian country. 2 Cherokee elders who attended the most recent gathering hope to spread their message about one of Indian country's oldest organizations, the Indian Women's Pocahontas Club.
This organization was founded in 1899 by the women that came home from the female seminaries all over, because their education was at the female seminaries, and they came home for the summer and they needed something to do to entertain themselves, so they started a club and an organization. So they met weekly, and they were having such a good time that Will Rogers lived there because it was in the Kuiskui district of the Cherokee Nation, which is where we still live today. and that's where this club was founded and organized. The female seminaries were really started when we were removed to the West, and the Cherokee Nation put a great emphasis on education. It was founded right before the Dawes Act in 1907, which created a land base that they owned, which you had to be an enrolled member of the Cherokees. So this organization stayed close, they stayed close-knit through all of this, where they were taking, parceling out our lands, doing those kinds of things. And they stayed organized until we finally got the right to vote in the 1920s. I believe in the 40s, N.B. Johnson was president of our organization, and then he became president of, he was the first president of NCAI.
Other notable members included Will Rogers and the Cherokee Nation's first female principal chief, Wilma Mankiller. The club has well over 200 members and is very active within the community.
Our club at the very beginning was limited to 35 people. Well, those 35 people started aging and getting older, so we had to open it up, the membership up to anyone, any Cherokee woman. So now we have over 200 members, all of the United States. Some of them are based in Oregon, Texas, Florida, wherever. They have also wanted to start a chapter. So that's in our future. We'd like to have a chapter in each one of these states, so that because it's important that they get their women together, and there's strength in numbers, and we can help our communities if we can get all of our Native women together. Currently, we are working on our Hats Off to Will. That's Will Rogers. They call him the Cherokee Kid. That is a scholarship fundraiser, and all of our scholarship, all of the funds from that particular event go to the Indian Women's Pocahontas Club Higher Education Scholarship Fund. The only requirement is that they can trace their ancestry to the Dawes Roll for the women. It's a women's organization. Now, the scholarship is for any Cherokee student, male or female. They just have to have their tribal card, their Cherokee Nation tribal card, and a GPA of 2.5. We also sponsor an art class at the Boys and Girls Club in Chelsea, Oklahoma. The Chelsea is a small town. Most of the school does not offer art. They don't think that's important. But to our Native children, to our Native people, art is very important. When we have our events even, we have our youth involved. We get them involved in being, help us with our setting it up, tearing it down, serving the people, learning how to serve the elders, learning how to serve the people, and being a part of their communities and learning how to serve. That's something we have to, as elders and as women, we have to teach our children to serve the people and to take care of our communities.
Both Deborah and Ollie are dedicated to the mission of the Indian Women's Pocahontas Club, where they encourage all women of Cherokee descent to consider joining the organization.
We are the caretakers of our culture, our heritage, and our communities. Each one of us has a gift. The Creator has given each one of us a gift, but sometimes we don't know, especially our young women, they don't know what their gift is. So we have to work with our young women to find out what is that gift that the Creator has given to them and help them to develop it. For our young children, for the children coming up, they're our future. We have to form them now and teach them as young children. We've got to teach them who they are, where they come from, and put them on a good path. Teach them in a good way.
Today, we're creating a way to really preserve our history and to bring our history and our story forward. We're a strong group of Cherokee women. We're 200 and some strong all over the United States of America. And we carry our history, our heritage, and we hold our education in utmost honor.
For more information about Native Report or the stories we've covered, look for us on the web at nativereport.org, on Facebook, and on YouTube.
Thank you for spending this time with your friends and neighbors in Indian Country. I'm Ernie Stevens.
And I'm Rita Aspinwall. Join us next time for another Native Report.
Rita Aspinwall is an enrolled member of the Fond du Lac Band of Lake Superior, Chippewa, and is an ICWA social worker with Fond du Lac Social Services. Ernie Stevens is a member of the Oneida Nation of Wisconsin and is a film and television producer. Production of Native Report is made possible by grants from the Shakopee-Mdewakanton Sioux community, the Blandin Foundation, and the Duluth Superior Area Community Foundation.